Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome to our weekly review series where we're going to be talking all there is to talk about for Mandalorian Season 2. We are here with Episode 1, Chapter 9, The Marshal, and it's been a year. This has been a long time in the waiting, and we're finally here to talk about it today. This is going to be incredibly spoiler-filled. We do want to get that out of the way at the beginning, so if you haven't seen this episode yet, please go and watch it because we're going to ruin everything in this episode. But before we do, I'm going to go to the socials first. So over to you, George.
Absolutely. So we always say the best way to find us is on Facebook, Twitter, etc., which we're going to go over. So Facebook, Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy. That is the best way to find out what we are doing because sometimes we aren't prepared. It will be late notice. However, there's also a TeePublic link. What the main thing is with The Mandalorian is we are going to be live every Friday for the next 7 weeks now. It's going to be 10 p.m. GMT. I'm not going to attempt to read out in American time because I believe their clocks go back this Sunday or the Sunday after. So we're not fully there with PT, ET, all that kind of stuff. But 10 p.m. guys, if you're based in England, and obviously we will give further details as we get nearer and we found out when the clocks change in America. If you are watching from America, I believe right now it is currently 3 p.m. PT and 6 p.m. ET. I don't know why I've had to learn American clocks in the last few months, but here I am.
You've got it down.
Even for the Australians out there, I believe it's 9 a.m. Happy Saturday to you all. Have a good weekend. However, we are here to talk The Mandalorian, as Chris said, Season 2, Episode 1, Chapter 9, all that kind of jazz. We're going to carry on our playlist titles and just call this Chapter 9. We have a beautiful Mandalorian playlist with some really cool artwork. If you didn't already see our new thumbnail, that's right. We managed to get photos of the concept art already. I'm quite proud of that. Obviously, it's very late notice because all our other posts had a full HD photo. But aside from that, I'm ready to talk this, Chris. I've talked too much already. I've kind of cut you off. So we've got a kind of mini schedule, and we're going to kick this off. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to check out Star Wars stuff, then obviously we're going to give very brief thoughts on Season 1 because it was almost a year ago now, which is unbelievable because it still feels like I was sort of sending them to everyone quite recently when it wasn't. So, Chris, give us your sort of very brief overall thoughts on this episode.
On this episode, I thought it was a good, solid episode. It was a good foundation episode, getting us back into the Star Wars world. It's kind of I've always said, like, Mandalorian's the breath of fresh air. I know that our opinions differ on the sequel trilogy, and I don't want to harp on that too much, but we're both pretty much in agreement with Episode 9. Left that sour taste in our mouth with a lot of Star Wars fans, I assume. So it's kind of, let's just get to Mandalorian. Let's just get back to these characters that we love. We love Mando. We love Baby Yoda. We kind of said that as well, that Season 1 did a good job at establishing these characters. Didn't blow me away or anything. I didn't think it was like a masterpiece of a TV series in terms of TV that I'd seen, but I was interested to see where the story was going to move forward. It posed a lot of interesting things at the end of Season 1 that was going to lead into what was going to be the main story arc for our Season 2. As it is, it kind of stands as like a standalone episode, I would say. We know that a lot of these characters that are introduced in this are going to come into it again later down the line, but that's kind of how the structure is with Mando. I do have some problems with it. There's a lot of fan servicey moments in there, but as a whole, there is action in this episode, which again would look great in a feature film in the cinema, and it's on TV. And I'm sure you'll talk about like the technology later on, but you can see the money on screen with this. You can see that they've upped the ante from Episode 1 with this thing. The episode looked absolutely gorgeous from a visual standpoint.
Absolutely, and I think I'm going to echo Season 1. I thought Season 1 was, you know, when we'd had rumors years before they announced Mando, there was going to be Star Wars in TV. And I think a lot of people were like, can you do Star Wars in TV? Because the last thing you want is Star Wars to look cheap. If anyone's not watched The Gallery on Disney Plus, really do go and watch it. I had to show my dad a couple of behind-the-scenes videos after tonight just to explain the sets they've got, the tech they did, and we'll go into that certainly nearer the end when we talk about the Crate Dragon. As we said, there's going to be a lot of spoilers throughout this, but Season 1 I was very impressed with. There was 2 episodes where I really, really struggled. Episode 5 and 6, it's not too hard to guess. A lot of people do, but I was blown away at the technology. Some of the directors they were obviously getting, like Taika. Obviously, I apologize, I've forgotten her name. That did episodes 3 and 7, who's obviously doing Kenobi now. I adored a lot of it, and obviously Baby Yoda, which is a big thing. Baby Yoda kind of, me and you said this a year ago, he kind of like reunited the Star Wars fans to a point. And then I guess they were I'm not going to, like I said, we're not going to harp on 9 because I really want to talk about it because I'm not over it still. But that united us in a really different way. But we had a Mando season finale a week after that, and that was a great finale. So I think Series 1 set up everything I needed, from an introductory series to a new era in Star Wars to, not obviously, ironically, not doing Jedi. Granted, there obviously Baby Yoda is one. It was a breath of fresh air, I think, for a franchise that needed to go in a new direction. And I think it's done that. And I think the way it finished with Moff Gideon, certainly Gus from Breaking Bad is our go-to. I'm very excited for this season. And that's a really good segue into kind of the next part. We're going to talk very briefly about hype for season 2, because I wasn't really hyped.
You were a late bloomer with the hype on this one, which I'm surprised about, actually.
I think you got to it before me, because that first trailer came out and I was like, it's cool. I'm not getting carried away, and I'm going to bring it. This is the last time I bring it episode 9. No, it won't be, because I'm going to talk about the final scene, the action in this. But
it's not going to be the last time we talk about
it. I won't bring this up until we get to talking the final of this. But episode 9 almost ruined Star Wars for me. I had a ticket to Celebration this year. I obviously, coronavirus happened, it got cancelled. I wouldn't have gone with that, and I was debating getting a refund, even though they moved it to 2022. And I was in this place, and I think a lot of older people talk about this, where certainly when they were our age watching the prequels, where they kind of gave up for a bit. It took them a while to get them back in, or vice versa. And it'd been a really good few years, and I had a lovely time. Obviously, in my childhood, you had a gap, then it came back, and I was not in a good place. I'm going to be honest. Like I got that beautiful box set there, the 4K one, and I didn't even bother watching the last 3 because I just didn't want to get to 9. So, rant aside from that, I don't know, it must have been this week where I was like, okay, Mando's back. I'm getting more excited. I keep seeing merch. Is it Mandalorian Monday, they called it? And suddenly the theme's in my head, and how it has that slow build. And I was like, am I slowly getting hyped this week? And I think you'd messaged me. And then I ended up ordering the vinyl box set from Mondo after pulling the trigger. Then I ordered a couple of vintage collection figures, and then the Mandalorian theme's fully there. I've got the playlist back on at work, and I was hyped. I didn't even watch trailer 2. I saw trailer 1, and I was pumped this morning. I got up early, I showered early, everything. I even wore a Mandalorian t-shirt just to walk down the stairs again, to be able to watch it this year on your TV at home, not having to fly to America to watch it, not having to download it, send it to sort of 10-15 people, which I was doing on a weekly basis.
I don't know what you're talking about, George.
It was like a deposit, because I was always going to get a subscription in March. I wanted a free deposit. And this year I was like, okay, I can literally just sit down and turn it on. And that was a really big thing as well. But yeah, so hype wasn't there, but it's flown in at the last minute, and I'm fully on the Favreau, Filoni, Mandalorian hype train that there is. It's back. Star Wars is back. As Cornelius Fudge said, he's back. That's Baby Yoda.
They are kind of the dream team, aren't they? At the moment, Favreau and Filoni. It's like this is the way. As yeah, definitely. I think they've got it down. They've got a winning formula. It's not completely perfect. Like there's still some niggly little bits, which it looks like some people have been commenting. Please do feel free to comment throughout as well. We do want a discussion going, and we will get to all of your comments later on in the discussion. For me, hype was just kind of a stasis, really, with a slight peak towards the end. It was like when we were a week out, I think I was like, oh my god, we're going to get some more Mando. I just love these characters. Star Wars, it is kind of one of those things that I enjoy, but I like it to go away for a while and come back. I've kind of ignored the sequels, and I'm like, just give me more Mando. So the hype was there, and going into this, turn it on Lucasfilm, and then you've got that new cool Disney Plus Star Wars thing. I was like, oh, here we go, we're back into it, and we were straight into it. So I guess we'll go into more of the episode proper now. So a brief summary of the episode. We're thrown right into it with Mando and Baby Yoda. He's got a lead on the whereabouts of he's traveling to get leads on the whereabouts of the other Mandalorians from the ending of season 1, which takes him to the planet Tatooine, where he discovers this mysterious guy in Mandalorian armor, which turns out to be Boba Fett's armor. And there's a whole series of adventure happens with crate dragons, Tuscan Raiders, and some other little things that we're going to talk about as well, which might be some of my favorite things in the episode. So right from the off, just like the feeling of the episode, and this is what season 1 did so great, and I thought they nailed, in terms of the tone and what Star Wars used to feel like, that very sort of grimy, dingy world, especially with Tatooine, and the Western theme, like the mashing of the Western and Eastern cinema into one, and I thought they nailed that, especially in this one. There's loads of moments in this which feel like they're straight out of a spaghetti western, whether it's the long shots walking into the town in the opening scene, and you've got, just all the critters, no dialogue, and it's just the sound of the environment, very sort of Sergio Leone. You have gun standoffs, you have walking into the town in Tatooine, everything like that. They just nailed it so perfectly, and that tone is what Star Wars from a visual and like tonal perspective is. It's a bunch of different fairy tales. There's loads of different culminations, but inherently it does have that Western edge to it, that space Western edge. And I thought this episode, probably out of all of them, was the best one that nailed that tone, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm going to go on episode 5 because I'm actually we're going to go through everyone's comments, guys. We're going to pick and choose, but we will go over all of them, especially as we develop. Dave Knife Ryan put, it felt like an apology for last Tatooine episode. This is how you do it properly. I have to bring that up because episode 5 tried to be the Western episode. The guy walking around the town, oh, look, there's a badass that's going to maybe betray him for money. And I think this is what episode 5 wanted to be. Granted, it's very, very different. And episode 5 maybe sets up an overarching plot story, which we may find out about in the next couple of weeks. We may not. I thought from the get-go, I was like, okay, not show me something new. Because of course we want to see something new. You shouldn't ask for it, but you know very well that I used to be a massive wrestling fan because I've not watched it for about 3 years now. And in the trailer, there were Gamorrean guards it was like a UFC octagon, but with ropes. And I was like, okay, TNA's back. And you called it, you messaged me the day. I think all that wrestling stuff's going to be really early on. And I didn't expect it to be the opening scene. We got the great Baby Yoda clip from the trailer, locking himself in the hatch. Great to get it out of the way early because it means there's stuff we've not seen. And I liked the scene. We've kind of spoke off. I was really confused by a Cyclops in Star Wars. We won't get into that. That's a very different discussion. But I just keep going back to this one moment, and it's one of my favourite moments of both series because a Gamorrean guard leaps over the top ropes trying to take out the Mandalorian, and he just stands 1 yard to the side, and he just falls in slow motion like this through a table. And in my head, I've got like Jim Ross commentary going through, and it was incredible. It was a great fight scene. Again, stuff in the trailer with scene, get it out the way quickly to leave us the things haven't. But as an intro to bring us back, like, what is this season doing? As you mentioned, lead on Mandalorians. He's had this guy knows one, and it's Tatooine basically in a really violent, one of the most violent Star Wars deaths. It was like the end of the Lion King, hanging him from a rope, turning the lights.
Also directed by Jon Favreau.
Yes, I forgot about that. Sorry, I meant the original, but yeah, also Jon Favreau. Yeah. And then we got then he said Tatooine, and I'm going to be completely honest. I really struggled here. I thought, oh my god, are we going back there? Not back there again? Because I was like, oh, is he going to goes back to Tatooine episode 3 or 4? And then it was the next scene, and they're back at Mos Eisley, and they're back at the spaceport. And I apologize, I forgot the name of the actress. They had her again, the pit droids, and I'm not going to lie, the alarm bells were ringing. I think I hadn't messaged you at this point, but we kind of spoke before you watched. I said, I don't know how you'll feel, and I was really worried. R5 came back, which I can live with. I'd say it could have been subtle, but they do a close-up of the fixed hatch, so he's no longer the chosen one. And I was really worried, and then they finally gave us something that we haven't had since 1999, the name of a third town in Tatooine. And to go somewhere new, granted it's the same planet we've seen a dozen times over, I just thought, well, why not? Like, it felt if this had been set in Mos Eisley, I would have just honestly probably been really lulled. It would have been the cantina again. It would have been this, that. We're already going to get it in the Kenobi series, and we just didn't need it. And to go somewhere new meant they could do new things. And I was really sold on that. You kind of mentioned the whole Western environment, the locations, the building, the sort of shabby site. It was like playing Red Dead Redemption, like when you just
exactly.
It's like, oh look, a new village, and you just take out your gun and just like obliterate everyone. Like, it felt like one of those kind of things. And yeah, I've spoken a lot, and I don't know if I've overlapped what you wanted to say, but
no, you were going the same place I was going to go. What a difference a name change makes. Yeah, because I was exactly the same as you, and I'm going to bring up one of Carl's comments here because it's interesting. Both The Life of Brian and Carl Roberts, I agree with both of your points. I'm somewhere in the middle between the two, but Carl says, I'm torn on this episode. I enjoyed it, but really feel I'm being beat over the head with constant nostalgic references. Just makes the world feel small. And that is still probably my biggest criticism of this episode as a whole, although because we're holding it up to episode 5 from season 1, this really doesn't feel like it's as bad as offender as that episode was, which we discussed. But yeah, no, I was kind of the same. It started off strong with, this is setting up what we're going to do. I've always said I love exploring new sports and entertainment and betting and culture stuff in Star Wars. It was great to see the pod race in episode 1. You get glimpses of stuff on TV screens in Attack of the Clones of other sports, other races that are happening. I guess you could say even episode 8 tried doing something like that with the Favias or whatever it was. But this was like proper wrestling. We saw glimpses of that in season 1 with is it Cara Dune? Cara Dune's character, that fist fight with the I love all of that stuff, and it was just great seeing Gamorrean guards. That's nostalgia done right, because it's just that alien race that we're seeing again that we haven't seen since Return of the Jedi. My problem does come into it with R5 showing up and Timothy Oliphant's character riding a speeder that's made out of Anakin's pod racer, and all of these moments and all of these things, which I completely agree with Carl, does make the world feel a lot smaller. Everything has to be connected. Like the speeder that he rides didn't have to be Anakin's. It could have simulated like a pod racer. It could have looked like a pod racer. It didn't have to be his one. Arthur, it could have been any droid. It didn't have to be that specific one. And that to me does harm the episode, but it didn't feel like it was like hitting you over the head as much. It wasn't like, here's a stand-in Han Solo character. Here's the same booth that he sat in exactly the same pose, in exactly the same bar, and exactly the same planet. It wasn't as bad as that. And I think there are a lot of other positive things in the episode, which I know we're going to move on to, just to see sort of different cultures and everything. It was great to see that side of things. But I know we're going to talk about more about the Tuscan Raider side of it first. We need to talk about Timothy Oliphant, because you kind of prepped me before going into this that he was going to be in this episode, the type of character he was going to play. And when I pass over to you in a minute, you probably know more about the new canon, the new established canon, and the novels that have come out, because that is a character taken directly from that. I don't know much about that character, so I'm sure you can fill everyone in on that. But it was such a great offset to Mando's character. And the biggest comparison you mentioned was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I didn't know this, but you mentioned that in most things that he plays, he always plays a very similar kind of character, this lone gunman, this sheriff kind of character. The opening scene with him in this episode, where he walks up to the bar and he's stood beside Mando and they order a drink and they take it to the table. I wish you could do a side-by-side with that scene from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you've got them at the bar and they both go and sit at the table and have a drink. It was almost identical, even the lines of dialogue they were saying. But then again, it's that classic Western dialogue, isn't it? So I really liked his inclusion with this, and I'm sure we're going to see more of his character. They leave it kind of open-ended at the end with his character. I just thought he was a really cool addition into this world.
I adored him. So I'm going to be honest. So guys, if you know a bit of canon, I'm going to try and talk through it. If you know it well, you'll know I'm probably talking also nonsense. So when Disney took over, I believe Aftermath was one of the first pieces of new canon as such. So it was set directly after episode 6, Battle of Jakku, vice versa. And something to do with, there's like between chapters of the main story, there's like stories. So like there was one about Jar Jar Binks being like, he's now a clown. He's the guy that put the Emperor in power. And I'm going to be completely honest. Most of the new canon stuff I've even tried to read or looked at, I just instantly just dislike. Especially when you go back to 2015, it was very much the, you know what everyone hasn't liked for 15 years? They've all not liked the prequels. And we talk about fan service being a massive criticism, because it can be big time. These authors, and I don't mean to be horrible, because I've not fully read them all, so people can disembowel this now, but so much of what I was reading when it first came out was like, the prequels are rubbish. Let's fanfiction as much as we can, because we've been giving this new key where we're told the only current canon is 6 films, Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars, and like 1 book. That was all that was canon. They had a whole book to play with. So what did the first one do? Oh, look, Boba Fett could be alive. I'm not going to have JX just put a couple of comments in. I'm not going to bring them all up, because I know they didn't ignore the canonical fate of Boba's arm. I'm going to get to that as well. But essentially, what I knew heading into this was Boba's armor was seen on a Jawa's sandcrawler. There was no knowledge of what happened. Obviously, you'd presume he climbed out the pit, but there was never a definitive story to explain how, why, or when. It was just that the Boba Fett armor at some point is seen on a sandcrawler. Then I believe the character of Cobb Vanth was introduced, whether it's the same book at a different chapter or one of the other Aftermath entries. It's basically, there's a sheriff of an area in Tatooine, and he like proudly has Boba Fett's armor. So that's all I knew. And obviously, when the casting news came in last year, I mean, it was probably early this year. It was like, it wasn't this could happen. It was Timothy Olyphant is playing Cobb Vanth. This character is going to be in the Mandalorian, and it was massive. And as someone that knew Tibbets, I was like, that could be really cool. I'm very nervous about bringing some of these books things into it because Aftermath's reputation wasn't great. From what they've introduced a lot of very good things, but the execution wasn't on point with the ideas. And again, the whole like let's take the piss out of Jar Jar Binks thing, that just felt boring and too easy. And as someone that dislikes the character of Boba Fett, and I'm going to get to this later, I just really couldn't be asked with the concept of him being alive again. I'm just sick of it, the hype and all of it.
No one's ever really gone, as I keep saying.
I know
they keep doing, but
this is the one. Not to get into the other one again from last year, but this is the one where if anyone was going to still be alive, it was always going to be Boba. Get to that properly later, but the concept of someone having his armor, I thought was intriguing. I don't know how it would come off in TV, and the moment he steps foot in the door with armor that doesn't fit him because he's too tall for it, weird facial, like not expressions, but weird movements. I was like, I kind of like this dude. And then he took the helmet off straight away. There wasn't some big reveal to the episode. It was straight away, as you mentioned, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Jamie Lannister beard-esque, all of it. And I was sold. I loved his dialogue. I loved their sort of, not banter off one another, their lines back and forth. And a couple of minutes, I was like, I kind of really like this character because The Mandalorian has been great for some of the characters they've given us, like IG-11, Cara Dune, Apollo Creed. They've been great. And then you think of them, it's like, so what other supporting characters do we like? Did you like any of the crew from episode 6? Did you like B-Tech Han Solo? Did you like the guy from Memento and Batman Begins? And it doesn't have that. Obviously, we all have Werner Herzog, but he's really a villain, but it hasn't had that effect of a small character that we don't know how important they are. And he had everything. And then we got the backstory and stuff. And I know I'm talking way too much about the story, but every scene with him I loved. I liked his story. I liked learning a bit about what happened after, obviously, the Death Star blew up, the massacre, no power, people trying to take over. And I just loved the scene of him wearing this armor that he found in a sandcrawler, going into the place, shooting them up, and actually seeing Boba Fett's rocket being fired properly as well, rather than the weird effect around the web. That was so cool. And I'm going to just say it off the spot. Obviously, I might have a different opinion in the next 7 weeks, but Timothy Olyphant wearing Boba Fett's armor is more compelling a character than Boba Fett ever has, or probably, I'm not going to say will be because he's now alive, but I just straight away was like, that is someone that fits in the Star Wars universe, and he's a welcome addition. And I was honestly so excited with it. I know I'm talking too much, but I loved it. Every scene, even later on, references. I don't mind the odd reference here and there, but smacking the jetpack and flying off. I had a little self-indulgent chuckle there, and I don't know. Am I being overstating saying that he was maybe one of my favorite Mandalorian characters, and it's been one episode into season 2? And I think
it's still too early to say, but I do think he was really cool within this episode. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I mean, are they going to go back to Tatooine again? Are they going to go back again?
Honestly, my money is they're still going to be there for episode 2. That's what I personally think. I could be wrong, but they're going to have to, because we've obviously got to talk about who at the end.
Yeah, so I don't want to go into Boba too much because I know that we're going to talk, he's going to dominate the ending of the conversation, but I think deep down, the rumors were always there. The idea was always there. We knew deep down in our heart of hearts that Boba was going to come back at some point, but we didn't know in what guise, whether it was actually going to be physically Boba's character was still going to exist after Return of the Jedi. We were discussing the idea, and they kind of blended the two, I suppose, with this, that the armor was going to be sort of like that mantle that was passed down, and the armor is the thing that continues and endures, but it passes from owner to owner, and I really kind of liked that. So it was nice seeing someone don that armor. They don't know who it belongs to. They just came into contact with it. They just wanted it. They thought maybe it looked cool, it was functional, and they get a hold of it not knowing the entire history that belongs to that armor. So I quite like that concept. But now, obviously, the owner is back in it. But we'll talk more about that later. To your point about the jetpack, though, JX mentioned, and I did kind of like this too. I love that there seems to be a known flaw in Boba's model of jetpack, that hitting it in this one spot causes it to backfire. I guess it is now. I mean, it's happened two times that we've seen it. So the jetpacks have never been great, have they? Mando's is holding up okay at the moment, but Django's just like doesn't fire when he needs it to in the arena, and Boba's maybe it's just the family line of the Fetts. I don't know. But moving on to sort of the world itself. So we're introduced to the main threat of this story and the thing that the heroes have got to go up against. We don't know what it is right from the off. And when it started to happen, you posted, I think it's in the video description of this video, you said Dune inspirations. And I thought, okay. And when I saw it was like Tremors, when the sand began to sink and this thing was moving through, I thought, oh, we're doing sandworms. And I don't know why, because it's Star Wars, it's a galaxy. Of course, they probably exist. I thought, oh, no, because it's been so done. You know, Dune is the thing that's made it famous. I think there's a video game that uses nidus worms, I think they're called. I forgot what the name of the video game is. The goddamn Hobbit films had giant worms that burst out of the ground. I was like, I'm so done with this image until we get to the Dune film, because I'm looking forward to that and they look pretty cool. I was like, oh, is this going to fit Star Wars? Is this going to be sort of too been there, done that? Then they tell us that it's a crate dragon. And again, what a difference a name change can make, because then everything was forgiven. And I was like, yes, we haven't seen a crate dragon in action. I'm sure it's been in the legends and the old canon and everything like that. But within Star Wars, we've seen a skeleton of one. And we've heard an ever-changing special edition sound effect of what a crate dragon's meant to be. That's been it. So it's really nice that we had the opportunity to see it in this episode, and done so well as well. Like I mentioned earlier, like visuals. Maybe, I mean, I hope the rest of the series looks as good as this one did. I'm sure it did. It's Disney putting the money behind it, but I'm hoping they haven't kind of just pushed all of their money onto this episode to make it look as good as it has, which means some of the effects are going to sort of look a little shoddy down the line. This was like big screen level. There's a moment, I'm probably jumping ahead because I do want to go back to the Tuscan Raiders in a second. One of the best moments of this episode for me was where you've got Mando and Timothy Oliphant's character, and they both fire the jetpacks and they fly against this thing. I was like, this was like taking me back to episode 8 of season 1, where you have Mando latch onto the TIE fighter. I'm like, I am seeing an action sequence that I have never seen in Star Wars before. This is incredible. This is like biblical. The immense, the scale of this thing, the framing, the shots, and obviously you've got Favreau directing it too. He knows his way about big screen films, so he's probably able to bring that same sensibility straight into the smaller screen with this. It was great. The effects looked phenomenal. The bit where they're like shooting at its head close up to it looked amazing. It looked like Shadow of the Colossus, if anyone's ever played that video game, just this immense thing they're up against. And if I'm going to, I guess I'll let you talk about the crate dragon. I was going to move on to the Tuscan Raiders, but that's probably going to be a big subject in itself. But I thought as a spectacle, it was incredible. And it was just nice to go back to that existing canon of like little lines and little glimpses we've seen, but actually bring it to life and let us see it in the universe.
And I was shocked because I was like, oh my God, a giant worm. You know, when I think of that, I always think of the Kraken in Pirates of the Caribbean, because you get the little rustle of the water, and it's one of my favorite, like, I guess, monster villains. But I wasn't prepared. Like, you saw that one Bantha, the first one, or first of many, I guess we can say. Yeah. And he's just aimlessly standing there. You're like, oh, okay, I know what's going to happen. Obviously, we saw the Dune trailer. I haven't read the book. Obviously, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't start reading it because I knew it was getting delayed. So I'm one up there. Sorry, Warner Brothers. But you're right. I'm going to talk about the tech because I saw an interview a couple of weeks back from Favreau where he basically spoke about season 2, where he said because of obviously we don't know the chunk of it, the budget of season 1 was about 120 mil, we think. Which is about $15 million an episode, which was, I believe, the second most expensive TV show in history for a season 1. Crown still tops everything, like $20 million an episode, which looks phenomenal. But he did his interview and said, now that we don't need to build a studio or technology, because that was a big chunk of the season 1 budget, they've said we've now been able to put things into season 2 to elevate it to the next level. And it sounds like the kind of thing that everyone would just say, of course we put more money in, it sounds better. But there's a couple of shots, and I'm not going to get into like tech because it doesn't matter if it's 1080p, 4K, or whatever. I was watching that and I thought, oh my days, they're not on location. That's a box in LA. They're filming in a box. Again, go watch the gallery if you haven't. And that's where it blew me away completely. Looks so much better than season 1. That just the action, the cinematography. I mean, obviously it wasn't shot on IMAX cameras, but they do the aspect ratio change for the action scene at the end, which I loved. It didn't drop in and out. It stayed there. It didn't go too quick. It didn't close too quick. It did the right thing. And I think the Crate Dragon was interesting because it's what you said. They kind of say Crate Dragon, like, oh, so now we can kind of put a face to a name rather than a skeleton. And I guess if people want to say, people go way too over the top of Easter eggs. If you want to say that the mini skeleton is an Easter egg, it's not. But I kind of get it if you want to say it is.
Where did they get that from? That's what I want to know.
I know.
It just cuts and they have a skeleton of one lying around.
It's like a Monopoly board, isn't it? It's like weird. Like, well, where did you get to build that? It's like, you know, like architecture, like paper, like buildings. Like, oh, but I thought it was just a really cool concept that to see this thing that we don't know anything about. We don't know what's going to look like. We don't know much about it. I think even like Legends had a different interpretation, and it was a big risk. If someone would have told me last week, like, they're going to go back to Tatooine, there's going to be a Crate Dragon, there's going to be Tuscan Raiders, and there's going to be Boba Fett armor and Boba Fett, I'd have been like, But the way the episode did it, where I was down, and it felt like something new because it wasn't Mos Espa, it wasn't Mos Eisley, it wasn't. We got a Sarlacc pit reference, which, you know, it lives inside an eaten Sarlacc pit. That's cool to know that they can die. So I always kind of wondered, like, what happens. Obviously, don't want to know anymore. It's going to get a bit weird, but I love the action. The action, again, felt like a film. And I said I'd make one last comparison to 9. The action, this 20-minute finale, not to shit on 9 too much, this felt like a finale to, you know, look at the climax of last year's film where we had dubstep lightning in pitch black with a blue filter and too many ships, too many this, and things all said and done. Just a couple of people. And I thought, is this going to feel like that episode 4 from last time with the here's all the locals helping out? It wasn't that community driven. It actually felt like Mando's got to do this. And then we had, of course, I'm not going to give the name of the description that I called the Bantha for obvious reasons, but we had a Bantha covered in explosives, which was terrifying. Like, you can't not feel bad for him. Like, he just sat there, like, he's trying to run away, and like Mando's like pulling, like, you know, Captain America like pulls the helicopter. Like he's pulling this Bantha in for its like really sad fate. But you know, again, you've seen that before. You've seen people go into monsters and destroy them, but it felt new because they were doing new kinds of action in Star Wars, and I don't think you can do that stuff in films. You can't have a giant dinosaur thing. Of course, they're going to now adapt. I forgot the name of the filming studio, but they've built one in Australia for Thor 3 because obviously Taika's used it. Disney's built one at Pinewood for Cassian, and if Kenobi's going to film there, they basically sit on the new technology that every other studio is probably desperate to figure out how to do. And to me, it's not sitting on money. It's sitting on the future of the industry. And, you know, I'd rather they use this to, you know, I get they can't go film in Tunis.
Oh, I think we've lost George.
Vision of.
Oh no, he's back. Oh, there you go.
Sorry. I was just going to say it's that George Lucas vision of I'm using the technology to push things to the limit, because this is the idea. Kathleen Kennedy said in the documentary that George Lucas had this about 10 years ago, this idea, but it wasn't there to be made. No one could make it, but he'd wanted to do it and instead had to do green screens. And look at what Ewan McGregor's been saying in interviews recently. It's like, I went on the Mando season 2 set, I got to don the robes for a costume test and see the environment. And as they've always said, I couldn't work with the green and blue screens. It was too much. So and from a technical standpoint, this was maybe technically the best episode in terms of visuals and everything. But as you said, I really hope this is not we've put the budget in one. I think this is going to be consistency across a series, which, you know, again, you could trick someone. Maybe my dad didn't know it was shot in a studio. He thought that was location. You use it to their advantage because, oh my word, you know, going back to Favreau was before we get into the meat of it, because I know I spoke a lot on this. You know, he kind of began tinkering with this on the Jungle Book. He had like tidbits of it, Lion King. You know, it was very similar. He built the sets inside the computer on the Unreal Engine. He put the VR cameras in it to do the cinematography. And then The Mandalorian was the perfect blend of what he'd done before, leading to what we now have as the future of the industry. And my word, it's just incredible, everything you see about it. So that's the last thing I'm going to say on the Crate Dragon. It was a great action scene. It was a great finale to an episode. But as I said, technical standpoint, head above everything I've ever seen on TV. But let's go back to the Tuscan Raiders.
Yes,
because I know you want to speak about that.
I do. I'm going to bring up a comment that I think it was The Life of Brian said. Where was it on here? Let me just find it. Okay. Again, I liked that it showed the Tuscans aren't just the savages we have known. This is a big thing I wanted to talk about. So, whilst the Crate Dragon was phenomenal and like one of the best sort of like action set pieces, there was a smaller moment, and it was a reference. It maybe was a fan servicey moment, but this was a fan service moment that worked to me, and I'm going to tell you why. I did Wikipedia these. They're called Massives, I think they're called. They're basically the dogs that the Tuscan Raiders have. When they went into that ravine and you heard the noise and one rounded the corner and it was there from Attack of the Clones. I haven't seen one of those since Attack of the Clones. I was just like, come to me. I wanted to like give it a hug, like, oh, thank you. I haven't seen you since 2002. It was perfect. And it's obviously there's been an update in CGI since then, so they look better than they ever have. But that's what you do. And I think it's just nice that we're getting that connective tissue back to the prequels. I've always said that because obviously the originals were made before the prequels were even thought of or anything like that. So you're not going to have that visual consistency between the two. The sequels kind of just banished everything more or less prequel related. I think they tried to distance themselves as much as they could from it. This is that nice blend where it feels like everything that we have known about Star Wars all under one roof. Visually, it mirrors more the original trilogy than it does the prequels, but they are throwing pit droids, things like that. We're seeing those in the world. We're still seeing those things that happened decades previous in the timeline, but they're still functioning in this universe. They haven't just magically disappeared out of nowhere. They're still integrated. It's a very small thing, but it was just so nice to see them. It was kind of, this is like, I guess, my super battle droid equivalent moment from the first series of Mandalorian. It was just like, oh my God, they're back again. It's nice to see something like that again. But yeah, so the way that the Tuscan Raiders were handled, I agree with The Life of Brian. It's nice to see a different sort of, I mean, I guess you could say that not all sand people are bad, right? Not all Tuscan Raiders are bad. You're probably going to have some more violent camps, which are the ones that we see in Attack of the Clones. You're going to have sort of like the more nomadic, just placid ones like we see in this one. They're quick to anger as well, but everything like that. But where was it in here? I agree with Carl on this one. I just didn't need 20 minutes of the Mandalorian speaking sand people. Now, I was almost getting Star Wars Holiday Special vibes from this, in that you have huge sections of alien speech with no subtitles. This one handles it better because, you kind of have those, what did he say? Oh, he says drink. So we get it. We get a context, but it did feel like there were very elongated stretches where we're just listening to sand people talking to Mando talking Tuscan Raider back at them, and it did kind of slow the pacing down a little bit. I thought a lot of that could have been cut or removed entirely. It was nice to see Tuscan Raiders sort of like fighting alongside the good guys, though. Never have I thought that I would see Banthas in action scenes. The Banthas were great in this. They looked amazing. It was that, and it's going back to what you said about the visuals as well. And I think this is the key thing and why Mandalorian looks as good as it does. But this is sort of like a rule of thumb for any film or any TV show, whatever. It's all about the blend of practical and CGI. It always has been. The more effects you have on screen, the faker it's going to look, because the human eye is good at detecting fakeness. If you have people in costumes and you have a set and practical things in shot, but you use the new technology, which they have, these big expansive landscapes where they can't shoot on location or it would be too expensive to shoot on location, it enhances what's already there in the shot. And it's this perfect blend between the two. And you get these, great sort of sweeping shots across the desert of them traveling with the Banthas all in line. And some people always travel in single file. I guess that's another reference there. But it was nice to see that culture, I guess. And you mentioned sort of like going back to episode 5 from season 1. The Sand people just felt like a shoehorned in reference. It was played more for laughs. This time, because we got to spend that time with them and they came along on the quest, and it was kind of that truce thing where they had to rebuild that trust between the two, felt more involved in the plot. So it didn't feel as fan servicey, like, oh, we're getting Jawas again, we're getting Tuscan Raiders again. It felt more like it felt necessary in this, I guess, is the right word.
Yeah. I think that's what kind of hit me on. Just read it twice. I always see it twice. Once, sort of get the first look. Second time for them, I'm going to look into a little bit more. And I kind of worried when they came. I said the episode 2 Attack of the Clones reference. You hear the growl, and it's like, oh my word. And not to get into the politics of it, as you mentioned, at the beginning they wanted to pretend this prequels didn't exist. And it took them a couple of years to warm to realize that these are the future. And I think when you've got Filoni that did the Clone Wars, Favreau has been very honest in his interviews last year. Said, I hated the prequels, and this guy here, like Filoni, but like taught me how great it is. And obviously, Favreau was in the Clone Wars as well. And it's just great to see it feels like, again, not to get into the whole George Lucas protege thing, it's like that's something George Lucas would have done. He'd have put the dogs in. He'd have gone to a Tuscan camp. And it's not, they're not pretending it didn't happen. They're not going to have like one Bantha and 2 Tuscan Raiders doing the usual gestures. And I was concerned when they came back and they just started doing all the weird stuff. I was like, I didn't like it in episode 5 of season 1. I think I struggled because it felt like, as you kind of said as well, we spoke before we hit record, it felt very comedic. It didn't really work. Especially in that episode, you had that awful Han Solo, like, what's he saying? Why? You speak to them this. And again, going back to liking Timothy Oliphant, his kind of, he pipes up, it's like, these raid my village, kill my people. And I liked that you had that kind of, obviously very play by the numbers, they're all going to get along at the end message, but you still had tension that you think, is he going to actually shoot one in the head? Because it's built up to it. And I kind of enjoyed them in this. It's what Dave said in the comments. It's about learning about that culture, and on paper, do you need to know about the Tuscan Raiders culture? No, but at least it means next time they pop up, they're not doing pot shots at pod racers or stealing wives, chopping people's legs off, all that kind of jazz you get from the other films. So it was a nice idea to delve into it a little bit more in this, and I don't think we had too much of it. The dialogue stuff was weird. I kind of felt like I was watching a GIF when the Mandalorian's doing loads of hand gestures and stuff. I felt like I was doing the robot, but I was surprised that I liked it. I was very nervous with this episode as some bits happened, and I liked it, and I love that scene. Again, there's that one Bantha, and then the Tuscan Raider starts running, and then the Crate Dragon just annihilates that one Tuscan Raider.
Yeah, no, I love that bit.
It just cuts to Baby Yoda, like, what? So I had a lot of fun with that. Again, a good addition, and in a film, you cannot have that time. You don't want the time of them. A film, you cannot afford to give them 5 minutes because they're irrelevant to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
A TV show you can, and that's the difference of film and TV. You don't need to make a film in TV, and in films, you don't need to make it like a TV series. Granted, MCU's done what it has done, but Star Wars doesn't need that kind of, let's take 5 minutes to have a discussion on this, because it's unneeded for a film. I don't mind giving up a couple of minutes in a 50-minute episode to develop something else we've spoken. Again, Crate Dragon, don't need it in a film. Welcome addition to TV. That being said, I think that's everything I can say up to the final point.
One little thing before we get onto the big thing.
Yeah,
I need to do a second watch of that. You've seen this episode twice now. When the Tuscan Raiders hand Timothy Oliphant that weird sphere thing, and it's like this fermented, horrible spelling, whatever it is, and he cracks into it, I swear it makes the force choke sound. That kind of like glottal stop, that like throat crunch. When he breaks into it, I need to do a second watch of it. I swear that happened. I need to do a second watch.
I didn't hear it, but I'm going to keep an eye out if I end up watching it again, because it was like weird sort of intergalactic, like when someone like breaks garlic in a series, they put like green smoke up. It was a very weird thing like that. Sorry, I have to bring this up.
Go on, sorry.
I have to bring this up. Carl, I'm on the same wavelength. Baby Yoda in the pot is a pop figure. The moment that happens, I can see the money printing now. I can see the printing, the merchandise. Here, buy a teapot. Why? Because a Baby Yoda pops out of it. I would buy it. I'm buying everything.
I'd buy it.
Yeah. We haven't even spoken.
Disney know it too. That's the thing. Disney know it now. Like they took a shot, they're manipulative, and they make it as cute as they possibly can. And Baby Yoda's still cute. And they did season 1. It took the world by storm. They're going to double down on it now. It's going to be like what Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park. You're going to slap him on a lunchbox and you're selling it. You're selling it. That's what's going to happen. And I'm fine with it because Baby Yoda's great. I will say, though, before we get on to the big ending, doesn't really filter into this all that much. And I think the argument's been made that Baby Yoda could have just been left at the with the lady. I can't remember the name of the actress with the pit droids. He contributes nothing to this plot, essentially. It just does the brief cutaways and you go, oh, Baby Yoda's still cute. And that's it. He's just sort of along for the journey. Doesn't really need to be. I thought he was going to like use the Force against the Crate Dragon or something. I was like, I mean, he's too young. I mean, he's 50 years old, but he's still a baby. I was like, he probably can't do that. Thought it was going to be like reminiscent of the Mudhorn scene or something like that. let's just get on to the ending. Let's just get on to the biggest talking point of this entire episode, Boba Fett's return. As I mentioned earlier, we all knew it was coming, and I need to bring up one of Carl's comments right here. If I can find it, let me have a look. Here we go. On a positive note, this is the way you do subversion with the way they handled Boba Fett. So this is how I thought it was going to go. When they mentioned that it was a hollowed out Sarlacc, because we've only seen one Sarlacc in the series, I thought, oh, I know where we are right now. It looked different because Jabba, the pit of Carcoon or whatever it's called, it looks very different visually from where we were. This looked more like a cave. But I thought, the geography could have changed in those amount of years, I suppose, with how Tatooine is. I thought when they blew up the Krayt Dragon, we were going to have Boba Fett climb out of like the bloody ruined carcass of the Krayt Dragon, and we were going to get that final reveal there. I did see whisperings online, and you told me like the ending was key, and we were going to get a big reveal. And as soon as we were on Tatooine, as soon as they were talking about Sarlaccs and everything like that, I thought there's only one person it can be, and it's Boba Fett. We have Tamora Morrison back as Boba this time, I guess. Does look a bit too old for the character. We talked about that before we came online, but it's just great to see him back and looking completely different. You even said that if people aren't completely knowledgeable about Star Wars, people would probably miss this reveal. He looks so different because it has been so many years since Attack of the Clones came out, and it just kind of puts into perspective how much you can age between that time from 2002 to 2020. But I mean, it's a great final reveal. I think that the switch in aspect ratio in that moment, I never really clocked onto the fact that the action scenes were like filmed on like a bigger aspect ratio. I just took it as like a sort of Western focus on this kind of thing, like a cinematic technique, I guess I thought it was. Very interesting to see where this goes. Now, we talked about Boba Fett. I don't think I hate Boba Fett as much as you do, but I will agree that sort of looking at assessing Boba Fett's character now, taking the prequels out of it and what they did with him in Clone Wars, which I actually loved what they did with him with some of the story arcs with him in Clone Wars. I thought that was some of the best stuff in the series. As he is in the original trilogy, he looks cool. He says a handful of lines, and then he gets taken out way too easily in Return of the Jedi, and that's it. That's all we know for Boba Fett. So now he's back. This isn't the first time that Filoni's brought characters that we thought were dead back to life and done something with them, chief among them being Darth Maul. And look what they did with Darth Maul. It's still kind of that weird middle ground with Darth Maul where in the context of the movies, I still go, he's dead. He dies in Phantom Menace. But in the greater canon, they did absolute wonders with his character, especially in that final season of Clone Wars. If they can do something similar with Boba Fett, if they can sort of flesh him out, we will get a flashback scene of seeing him climb out of the Sarlacc pit or something like that. If they go more into his character, maybe he sort of talks about his past and his dead father from Attack of the Clones. There are so many things that you can do with a character that basically doesn't have a character after a certain point. So I don't want it to become the Boba Fett show, and I don't think it will. But they are juggling a lot of characters. We know that we're pretty confident that episode 5 of this series is going to be the big one where we have Ahsoka and we have Rex and there's a bunch of other characters that have been announced as well from previous canon. If it does what they did with Timothy Oliphant's character in this, where they are taking a character from canon, but still introducing him to an audience that might not know this character. It's just going to be the hardcore Star Wars people that know these characters, but they're still going to explain it in the context of the actual episode of the series. I think it's going to be fine, but I do think that Boba Fett as a character, whilst I do kind of want characters when they die to stay dead, if they can do something great with his character, I'm totally on board with it and seeing him go up against Mando or whatever they're going to do with the character.
Yeah, this was a big thing. I think I'm glad you brought the shot. Dave in the comments has the change of perspective, the dual suns. I didn't think that reveal was coming. We knew he'd have the armor at the end of the episode. We don't know what would happen from that. But just him in the sort of wilderness on the mountaintop, again, you don't expect it to come. It's not like the episode 5 where you've got the clanging of the boots approaching Fen Rao. It's none of that. This was literally the episode's done, the music's kicking in, but I'm going to tease you with this. And I thought it was really well shot because you get a glimpse, you get a little bit, you see the scar in his head, you see he's now bolden. I'll go over the sort of the Boba Fett thing. I know you've heard this from me a million times and people might have, but I think he's the most overhyped character in, again, history. I've probably said at the start of the episode. I really struggle with him, and I get people love him. That's fine. I'm not going to criticize anyone for saying like he's their favorite character. Certainly, I think more people that grew up with it in the 80s. I think Jon Favreau has been very adamant in saying that he wanted the Mandalorian to basically be a Boba Fett. The stories he had as a kid that he would play with his toys, have Boba Fett do, is the stuff he's wanted to do with the Mandalorian. So it's come in as very inspired by that, to the point that Mando's got the Boba Fett holiday special weapon. And I was really worried when they announced him. I love Temuera Morrison in Star Wars. I love Jango. I've said this to you many times. Jango Fett's far better than Boba Fett. He's the face that every Jedi saw before they died. And when they announced him back, I was like, oh God, I don't want him to play Rex. I don't want him to play Boba. I don't know why. I think I was just naturally a little bit worried that people are going to give him abuse because he's not the Boba Fett they read in the comics for 30 years, because he didn't crawl out the Sarlacc pit the way they imagined it. Obviously, we don't know what's happened yet, but I kind of said this to you before we hit record that he's kind of like, if you bring up, we're not going to be ageist, but basically, if you go into canon ages and what they should be, Boba Fett is about 40, and Temuera Morrison's in his 50s. So I'm not going to be ageist. And Rex, he's meant to be the old geezer from Endor, who's obviously in his 70s, because they're accelerated age, and he's kind of too young to be him. So Temuera Morrison actually is now perfectly working because he's too old to be Boba, and now he's too young to be Rex. So by keeping him bold, this is the kind of strategistic stuff I do. It means that they can just slap the fake beard on him for the Rex scene. So I was kind of down with it, but I'm just happy that it wasn't some over-the-top reveal of, look at me, I'm Boba Fett and I'm back. And I think we're going to get more of him. And I am willing, not to sound sort of pathetic, but if they want to divert time of an episode to kind of reintroduce him, to give him a character, because as you mentioned, Clone Wars, he was fantastic in Clone Wars. Going back to Lucas, so much abuse at the time Attack of the Clones came out. A lot of people, you've ruined Boba Fett. I've seen the argument not to get into race. So I was like, I imagined Boba Fett as Latino for 20 years because of my Latino heritage. And now he's a New Zealander. I was like, well, it doesn't really matter. He's New Zealander. He is one. He's Kiwi. So I kind of always struggled with reveals, what they want to do. And we've had, even me and you've had the discussion with the special editions. I always loved the Temuera Morrison voice in it. I guess now, again, this film hasn't just made the crate noise justified. I guess in theory it kind of justifies the voice. Canonically wise, it's there, but if they're gonna bring him in as a character to introduce him, I don't know what their plan is, but I'm more than happy for them to give it a go. They've earned my trust, as Mace Windu once said. Obviously it didn't work out too well for him in that situation, but I'm intrigued because I know that Favreau is a big Boba Fett fan. I don't think he's someone that would make a decision without consciously being aware of the repercussions, what it could do, and also with it, this show is called The Mandalorian. Boba Fett is not a Mandalorian; he's an altered clone. So I'm intrigued. I think I'm going to leave it at the level of intrigue. For all the people that are excited, I'm very happy you're excited too. I guess we're also going to get some new Boba Fett merch for the first time in 20 years because God knows we haven't seen much of that before, have we?
He looks very Saw Gerrera, I thought. Maybe it's just the bald head, sort of like
it's the bald head, like on the cliff. Like you're just going to hear him in the distance saying, like, "Mama, chin." I'm going to bring up one quick thing from Carl. Does this mean Boba is going to play a bigger role in season 2 than the first thought? I don't know. So we know that Fenrir is apparently going to be in it. I think I forgot the actress's name who voices Mulan. She let slip. I think Fenrir's returning. Obviously, we've got the dead body thing at the end of episode 5. So I hope that it's episode 2. I don't want them to go back to Tatooine again. It's going to be like Finn in The Force Awakens. Like, why does everyone want to go back to Jakku?
Well, I wonder if they're going to have a similar structure to how season 1 was, in that the first 2 episodes were almost like a two-parter, an introductory two-parter, and then you have, well, I guess the first 3 were almost sort of like a package deal, weren't they? Then you had your kind of middle ground ones where it was random adventures, and then the plot started to kick in like the final 2. I remember not being too keen on that, but if that's what Mandalorian's going for, and it is that sort of very episodic adventure of the week kind of feel, then I guess they have to kind of go with that. But now that we have this plot we need to surge forward with this plot and just make it plot centric each time. What I will say is that we knew that the Boba Fett reveal was coming. I'm glad they didn't delay it until like halfway through the season. I'm glad they've just done it, got it out in the open, and just ended it with episode 1. I thought that was the best way to handle it. And yeah, I think if there's no details on an episode 2 yet, and I think we mentioned this before, it's very difficult for me now because the way we consume TV has changed so much with the likes of Netflix, where you can just binge a series, and it's great, and 8, 10, however many episodes can be out there, you can get them all watched. Mandalorian's not one of those shows. We have to wait week to week. We have to speculate. We have ideas for him, but it's kind of nice to have a TV show like that. Not only does it take longer and you can appreciate it more, and it's not so, you cast it aside once you've watched all 10 episodes. It's going to be good. All that we know for the next episode, actually the next few episodes, is that Jon Favreau has written them. And that's it. There's no word on who's directed this next episode, what the title is, so we have no clues whatsoever. We are clueless until next week. But we will be here again next week, exactly the same time, 10 p.m. GMT. For more Mandalorian discussions. I think I've pretty much said everything I can this episode. The last thing I will say, the carcass of the crate dragon. What was it the Tuscan Raiders pulled out at the end? There's a ball.
I thought it was an eyeball, and then it wasn't. And it's like, is this meant to be like a what are them things called in the ocean that like have oysters and they eat you or something?
Oh, okay, yeah, no,
I don't know. I didn't
know if it was an egg. I thought it was a very small egg for this huge crate dragon, and then my mind went to other places, and I thought, please don't tell me what I think that is, and don't tell me they're going to eat that or something. I thought it was like, is that
like the egg thing from Towers?
Well, no, I thought is this like the crate dragon's genitalia? Is this like the test? I don't know. My mind was going to all places. It kind of reminded me of Boss Nass though at the end of Phantom Menace, where he's like free and he lifts the ball up. But yeah,
on the rewatch they did say they wanted something and something, and then there's an agreement never to do it again. But it was weird. It was really weird because I obviously the first thing was like, yeah, but
we have comments coming in. It's a pearl apparently. Pearl. It's a pearl. Crate dragon
perfect.
Pearl. Okay.
The best thing was because obviously my dad likes Star Wars. He's into it, not massive. Like he can't tell you everything, this, that, and that. But we're watching that, and there was just this passing. I mean, everyone that watches films with their parents know there's always like one-off brilliant passing comment, and it's just they're just chipping away at me. He's like, "Well, they're not going to go hungry for a while, are they?" And I was like, "Obviously not." I don't know why it's funny. It's just like a sort of weird thing, but episode 2 is just going to be like just this trail of banthas in single file carrying meat. But anyway, except for that, my kind of overall opinion is it's done what episode 1 needed to do. The Mandalorian is back. You've given me a new adventure. You're not kicked off with Gus from Breaking Bad yet. We're obviously going to get to him. But I'm more than happy to have a distant adventure for it to kickstart in maybe episode 3. But going back to Boba sort of finality point, again, doing it episode 1, you got it out the way nice and early. Now we're not sitting. Remember in season 1, me and you spoke every week like, we're going to get Gus next week. And we never did. And we would be doing that if they hadn't have announced Boba Fett today. So they ticked that off. Now we all think we know Ahsoka's episode 5. That's why they told us Dave Filoni directed episode 5. So I think everyone's quiet with that. But I'm ready for next week. And again, guys, I'm just going to repeat it once more that it's going to be every Friday, 10 p.m. GMT. And I'm going to use this time as we round off before I let you finish to say that tomorrow, though, we have our Scooby-Doo drink along at 8 p.m. GMT because I'm not putting American times again. And we're all going to get battered watching Scooby-Doo the movie. But anyway, your final thoughts on this episode?
Final thoughts, pretty much exactly the same as you. I kind of tentatively sent a voice message to you after it finished saying, like, I thought it was fine. And I was expecting you to go like, oh, I loved it. But we were pretty much on the same page. We both enjoyed the episode. It's good to be back in the Star Wars universe, kicking off with some strong Star Wars action. It's exactly what we want. I do want the plot to start kicking a little bit more now. We've got this opening out of the way. Baby Yoda didn't really filter into the plot all that much, which I thought was a shame. There were a few too many references in there and wink, wink, nudge, nudge fan service moments. If they've got those all out the way now, I'll be absolutely fine. Those are kind of my negatives, but it did show me a lot of new stuff that I haven't seen in Star Wars before. We got to see more of these cultures. The action looked incredible. And it's posed a lot of interesting questions already from episode 1. as to where the rest of the series is going to go. And there's still a lot of fertile ground to delve into with where the story is going to go for season 2. So still very much excited. But we want to hear from you guys, and we have heard from you guys during this stream, and we hope to see all of you back again next week as we discuss each and every episode as the series moves along. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let us know your thoughts on the episode, your positives, your negatives, everything in between, where you think the series is going to go. We do really want to keep this to sort of just like a Mandalorian discussion, Star Wars discussion. As we move on from week to week, it'll be a really good environment to get that chat going. And of course, if you want to stay updated with all of our videos, not just the Mandalorian ones, but everything else we have going on, you can follow us on Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy. And if you would like any t-shirts that we have a merch store. Go to TeePublic. The link is in the description. You can pick up some designs on there. So we are going to round off. I don't think that any other comments to say. No, they'll do it from us. So we will see you tomorrow for our very special Scooby-Doo Halloween episode. Definitely not one to miss.